You always hear, live life to its fullest. This morning's guest is learning how to die to its fullest. Who is he? You'll meet him coming up next on Carolina People. Good morning. Welcome to Carolina People. This morning we're at Garden City Furniture at 2444 Highway 17 Business in Garden City. We're focused on palliative care and hospice. And we're visiting with the medical director of Mercy Hospice, Dr. Charles Sasser. Good morning, Dr.
Good morning.
Sasser. Do you mind if we kick it off with Charlie? I know a lot
That's
of
fine.
folks call you that at 7 a.m. on a Monday
right.
morning. Of course, Garden City Furniture was kind enough to let us in early, a little before they opened. Isn't this a great facility?
Beautiful.
Beautiful, beautiful facility. A great location right out here. We see the cars coming by in the morning. The thrill here to get you in. Of course, you were with us about 4 years ago. We filmed there in the studio on the former Air Force Base, the
Yes.
TV station there.
Indeed, it's great to be back.
It was great hearing you talk a little bit about it. And for viewers who may have missed that, just having a better understanding of palliative care and hospice. And that's a phrase that people may hear. They may not think about it much because they think about it associated with near the end of their lives, possibly.
Right.
But for viewers who may not be familiar with the term, what exactly does it mean? Where did it come from?
It's a difficult concept to get your mind wrapped around because we are so steeped in traditional medical care. And it really is a different paradigm. It's a different approach. It was coined in the late 80s, really by the British and the Canadians. The traditional definition has to do with to cover over, to hide, actually. We use it in the sense that the word pallium is also a shield, and we use it in the sense of protecting patients, perhaps from unwanted interventions and unnecessary interventions, and to help people make right choices about their care given the context of their lives at the moment that they face life-threatening and incurable illness.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, of course, you also serve a role, I failed to mention, as the director of the palliative care program at Conway Medical Center, in addition to being an internal medicine practitioner with your own private practice there in Conway. So 3 hats. Which hat will you be wearing later this morning as you head out of here?
Well, I will go this afternoon I'll go later today to
Here on
hospice
Monday,
meetings
right,
on Monday.
sure. Yeah,
I have a hospice meeting, and when I finish that, I'll be back in the hospital doing palliative care until the afternoon, and then I'll be in the office.
In your office. Golly,
Yeah,
so
it's
you really almost every day are wearing all 3 hats.
And because so much of our time is spent in conversation with patients and families, families often can't be available until the evening. So.
Right.
Usually I'm back in the hospital in the evening having family conferences and things like that.
Great point. You know, we think about the ways that palliative care could benefit the patient. Oftentimes it really is benefiting clearly the families as well.
Well, the focus of palliative care, as it is in hospice, is that the patient and family are the unit of care that we address. When you the definition of the two are pretty much the same, hospice and palliative care. It's interdisciplinary care. It's medical care provided by a truly interdisciplinary team, usually doctor, nurse, chaplain, social worker, who have special skills in addressing the needs of people with chronic incurable illness. What we discover is that when you have a life-threatening illness that's chronic and incurable, your experience of illness is often outside of what traditional medical care can offer for you. And these folks really are out there on their own, floundering, trying to make decisions. And what we try to do is equip them with the kind of knowledge that helps them make the best decisions within the context of their illness. You know, when any of us go to the doctor, we have 3 questions that we want answered. One is, what's wrong with me?
Right.
What's going to happen to me? And what can be done about it?
Right.
Okay, and so our job, people will hear those questions answered, but often in a piecemeal fashion, and not in a way that they can really put it together and say, well, what does all this mean? So quite often we're called into situations in which people say, I'm really confused about this, I don't know where to go. They'll ask us to come in and sit down, and several of us will sit, and they'll hear the story from several different vantage points. A social worker approaches the medical story differently than the doctor does, for example, and the chaplain even differently. And so by the time we've had these conversations, people have a much better idea of what actually is happening to them. Our job is to make sure that they understand what the options are given their current situation, what are the best options, what are the likely consequences of the decisions they might make. Then they are equipped to try to make good decisions. This morning someone said to me, what would you do if it was your mother? That's not the right question. The right question is, now giving what I know and understanding what I value and coming to a sense of what my goals are for the rest of my life, what is the best choice for me to meet those goals? And so this is a process. When traditional medicine operates, basically the doctor says to himself, what's the disease that's working here? And what's the standard of care for treating that disease? Palliative care starts from quite a different perspective. It starts with, who are these people? What do they value most? What do they know about their disease? My job is to make sure they fully understand the nature of their illness and where they are in life's trajectory.
Right.
And then to let them know, okay, given this illness in its current state, here are some of the options that you can choose from. And then here is likely the best choice to meet the goals that you've stated.
Right.
Some people would say, you know, I've always been a survivalist. I'm a fighter. I want to go down swinging. I want to live as long as I can, regardless of what circumstances are. The choice that they might make is quite different from somebody who says, you know, I've lived a good life. I'm suffering. What I really want now is to bring closure, to find peace, and to be kept comfortable. I need for you to take away my pain so I can deal with these other issues that are very important to me, like spending quality time with my family, etc.
Right.
So those are sort of different directions that people would take.
Absolutely. Well, clearly you need a medical doctor and nursing support in palliative care, but you have to have more than that.
In this select population, and understand that I'm not talking about everybody across the board. I mean, we love people who, you know, are healthy, they get sick, we fix them, they go out, and they're healthy again.
Yeah.
I'm talking about that select population of people, many of whom are late in life, the vast majority, but it's really at any age in which you have a chronic incurable illness, in which it's a disease that you're likely to die from before your time, perhaps. So it can be any age, and this is the population that needs palliative care.
This the great role that Mercy Hospice plays, and for viewers who may not be familiar, we had Sister Connie Fahey on with us a couple of months ago. Great getting her in and heard a little bit about that. But for viewers who may not be familiar with Mercy Hospice, share with them a little bit about what prompted its launch a little more than a little more than a quarter century ago, and just what it's your role. I guess you've been medical director from the get-go.
I have.
Yes.
I have.
Congratulations. Yes.
Yeah. Well, it began in the early 80s, really with an impetus from Bishop Unterkeffler at the time, who felt like he wanted the church to demonstrate that it was broad-based in its approach to end-of-life care. It wasn't just fighting abortions and things like this, but it also wanted quality of life and emphasized that, and offered to give the Sisters of St. Mary that had the hospital in Dillon an opportunity to start a hospice, and he sort of selected Horry County as a place. And Sister Connie worked in Florence at the time, and she knew some folks and got in touch with me, and I said, it'll never work in Horry County. I had just come back from England, where everything was really close together, and doctors made house calls by walking down the street on the way home, and the demographics of a very large county, and how you would get to the outreaches of Green Sea and that sort of thing. It just seemed overwhelming to me, and she said, "We can do it. You just hang in there with me, and we'll do it." So I just grabbed a hold of their coattails, and away we went.
Wow. Yeah. That did require quite a bit of, I'm sure that was an added time-consuming component there in the early years, but when just a little, the transportation, the difficulty it may be a little more difficult even 25 years ago, getting to the hinterlands throughout this very large county, largest in the state.
It is still challenging, but we've adapted. Many different types of hospices will have branch offices.
Good.
So far, we've elected not to do that because we concentrate our training and education in one area, and I think this is where we've worked very hard to maintain expertise within the hospice.
And you've gotten support from all the area hospitals, I believe, the Horry County based.
We do. Actually, the Sisters of the Healthcare Corporation, which owned us at last from St. Louis, decided to withdraw from the state. And they basically gave the hospice to the 3 hospitals here. So there's a consortium of Grand Strand and Loris and Conway Medical Center that actually own and govern the hospice. So
I was fascinated to see that in 2008, physicians will, for the first time, be able to become board certified in hospice and palliative care. What's the significance of that, the importance of that? Am I correct? In 2008?
Well, it must be a typo because it was actually 2006.
Oh, okay, good.
And it's already happened.
It has happened.
It has happened.
Right.
And this was a major milestone for hospice, palliative care, end-of-life care to achieve legitimacy within the medical structure. So it's been a very proud moment for us to arrive at that place.
For everyone involved. That's wonderful. Yeah. That's wonderful. Well, I so enjoyed reading a piece. There was a 3 or 4 page piece that was sent over. I think it was a speech you gave in November of 2001, which was very well done, highlighting the 20th anniversary of Mercy.
25th.
25th in November 2001. Well, it was very well done, and of course the excitement there. Some powerful points from that. One of them, we'll actually just share with viewers a little about this piece that you presented there in 2001.
Well, it just sort of outlines the history and the struggles that any organization is going to go through, and it paralleled the evolution in medical technology in end-of-life care, which has just exploded and been extremely gratifying. So today, we can, under appropriate circumstances, manage the physical pain and symptoms of effectively probably 95% of the patients that we take care of. So the technology is there. Now, as I said to you before, dying is multidimensional. It involves every aspect of who we are. So we are very good and have come a long ways from back in the 80s when all we had was liquid morphine and something called Brompton's mixture and things like that. And if people were intolerant of morphine and vomited, we were just pretty much out of luck. And now we have just multiple ways to deal with that. So it's very gratifying. However, what do we do about spiritual care? What do you do about the socio-environmental issues, the economic issues? Unfortunately, the healthcare system has not responded to the needs of the country in the same way that technology has responded to technological issues.
Right.
You know, you could have a session with somebody on that.
Absolutely. Oh boy.
Yeah, I mean, we have a real dilemma with that in the country. So we have people who are constantly falling through the cracks. And indeed, there is no reimbursement for palliative care at this point. There's no way to have a funded outpatient palliative care program, and just about every hospital-based palliative care program is grant supported in this country. So there is no reimbursement mechanism. Hospice is different.
Right.
Hospice has a reimbursement mechanism called the Hospice Medicare Benefit. The problem with that is that it says in the law that you've got to have a diagnosis of 6 months or less to live if the disease runs its normal course. And so we do have patients who are in hospice much longer, but they have to demonstrate that they're still dying.
Right.
If they get better, if they respond to a supportive environment, families coming in, being given the tools to take good care of them, having their pain and symptoms relieved, guess what? They get better. They live longer. Then we have to discharge them, you see, because they've outlived their welcome under the Medicare
6 months,
benefit.
right,
Their
right.
6 months, you know. So anyhow, that's just one of the issues that we do have to struggle with.
At the same time, at least they're not being asked to reimburse if they do get better. They're not asked
That's
to
right.
reimburse the 6 months that the federal government picked
that's
up
right.
for them. So,
That's right.
so there is some small
it's
silver
good.
lining
It's
there.
good.
So
And
we
we
sure hope that folks will get better.
Absolutely, we want them, and we discharge about a third of our patients.
Is that right?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, because they do well, and there are, you know, we do more than cancer. Some cancers stabilize and just surprise us all, but people who've had strokes, people who have bad lung disease, people who have end-stage heart disease, they are very, very difficult to prognosticate about.
Right.
The person who's going to die from end-stage heart disease starts out the week they die with pretty much the same symptoms that they've had for the previous 6 months. You just don't know.
Right.
There is a study of prognosis on the day before death. And they took patients and doctors in the hospital who were severely ill, and they asked the doctors each day, how much time do you think the patient has? And each day the doctor would proffer a guess.
Right.
Then when the patient died, they went back and saw what the doctor said.
Right.
Well, patients with end-stage heart disease were given 6 months prognosis on the day before
day
they
before.
died.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's how hard. And the other end is people live much longer than you think they might, especially if you stabilize their symptoms and stabilize their environment. They really do much better. So.
That is wonderful. Well, I'm thrilled to think that a third of the folks that are diagnosed with less than 6 months to live, or 6 months or less to live, incurable, that a third of those would be coming out and being discharged. That's tremendous.
Well, they have developed the skills to live with chronic illness, and that's our challenge in palliative care, especially because then they get sick again. They come back into the hospital. The palliative care program in the hospital picks them up. And of course, our job is to stabilize them once again, but to offer them the kind of multidimensional support that allows them to cope with progressive loss, declining function, new symptoms, other losses, the economic challenges. You know, a third of people in this country exhaust their savings taking care of chronic illness. So it is a very expensive proposition to be chronically ill.
Charlie, we just got about 5 minutes, and I want to pull one of the quotes you had from this piece in November 2001 or March of 2002, where you said simply, hospice began and continues in struggle, conflict, and tension. And tension, you wrote a lot about the tension component, a little about struggle and conflict. In a few minutes, can you just break down, to just explain that, because it's significant. You later highlighted blurring the distinction between healer and healee, which was very good, but just break down the struggle, conflict, and tension.
Right. Well, the main area in which we see that is hospice was basically the first national HMO. It's a health maintenance organization. Okay, it works with a capitation fee. We get so much per day per patient, no matter how much they cost or how little. So you have that sort of framework. We are also called to this, and we are advocates of the patients, and we want everything for them they need. So we are at once both the fiscal intermediary and the provider.
Right.
So there's this constant tension. How do we stay afloat as an agency? How do we give our patients the best care they can? Do we give them radiation, which is very expensive? Do we offer them chemotherapy? You know, these are huge issues.
I hate to think that you have to go through that.
And we
every
do
day.
that and that's why we sit down a couple of times a week and have team meetings, and then to make a decision about, okay, here's what we're going to do here, and this is what we can do, and this is what is going to work best for the patient. So I did want to tell you one story about how I got into this from the beginning.
Please, since we've just got a couple of minutes.
Yes, my father died when I was 11. And I've been trying to make sense of that ever since. And I'm sure that had something to do with it. He died at home in 1953 under an oxygen tent with around-the-clock nurses who volunteered. He was a respected physician. With the doctors who came by twice a day and made house calls until he died. So I didn't get into this because my father died early and I was trying to rectify some problem in his dying. I did so because I wanted to learn how to die well. I wanted to learn how to live well until I died and to die well. And what has happened is that I have come to understand these are the most courageous people in the world. And I get up each morning and run to work because in their presence I become a student at their feet, eager to be taught.
The teacher and the student.
Reverse.
Are you not the teacher there? You're clearly the student.
I've spent most of my professional life learning how to take care of people and relieve their physical symptoms, but they teach me how to die with courage and dignity and a sense of meaning.
Do you get? Do you have the sense that folks around you are feeling the same way, that they're the students? I mean, that the other professionals that are there with you, as you all have the team meetings, do you?
Yes.
You get the sense that we're all learning from each of them?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's sort of part of being in this program, and that's why it's so incredibly gratifying.
Surely blurring that distinction between healer and healee.
We bring our wounds right into that environment. That's right.
That's powerful. Well, you think there's so many different ways, and as you think about that, did you have brothers and sisters, Charlie?
I have. I had 3 older brothers. Right. One is deceased. 3 of us were physicians.
Is that right? I was going to ask if anyone else had the similar response from your father's early departure.
I think that had a major impact on all of us, yeah.
That's a powerful thing. Well, thanks so much for being with us this morning. I'm sorry we've run out of time.
That's all right.
Great to be with you. Stay tuned to a little more Carolina People. Dr. Charles Sasser, the Medical Director of Mercy Hospice, coming up next. Think about that, a medical professional for more than 40 years, knowing internal medicine, knowing patients, knowing how to deal with patients inside and out, walking into the room later this morning as the teacher and walking out as the student. Think about that, the power of that. Knowing his profession, knowing how to care for others, but walking into a room later this morning and walking out as a student. And thinking about that simple great point from an anniversary just a few years ago where he wanted to speak. He didn't have a chance to. He later sent something back to a group to let him know what he would have said. And one of those was a simple one sentence in here. What do I do when in the midst of all my efforts to be professional, this dying person reaches out and places a healing finger on the source of my pain, thus forever blurring the distinction between healer and healee. That idea of clearly of recognizing boundaries, recognizing empathy needs to be there, but those are there's a lot that goes into it. There's a lot of distinctions that need to be clear. Dr. Sasser will be doing it later this morning. He'll be doing it this afternoon. He'll be doing it later, even into the evening. He's doing it every day and making a difference. Dr. Charles Sasser, thanks so much for being with us this morning.
My pleasure, Greg.
Absolutely. A treat to get you.